I remember when I was a kid, I used to go lay on the prairie and feel connected to the earth. And not some farmer's field, I mean one of those few remaining natural prairie lands with scrubby brush and the smell of sage in my nose. I'd feel the orange sun on my skin and know I belonged somewhere, that this was home. I think about all the people in my family who had traveled around this landscape, hunting and loving and living full lives before we got pushed onto the reserves. I knew my family was buried on the reserve, but I didn't grow up there. I only went there for funerals or to clean the graves, and it wasn't really our territory originally. Our chief had wanted us to be able to live in the Cypress Hills, but the government thought we were too close to the United States then, and they were tired of us going back and forth over the new border. I didn't really hang out with white kids until I went to school, and then it was just me and maybe one or two other native kids in our classes. I started learning about racism and colonization and why things were the way they were. And through it all, I still felt really connected to the land, to my home. I spent weekdays looking out the classroom window and feeling shy and small, and weekends at my uncle's land where he held sweats. And around native people and with my two native friends from daycare. The older I got, the angrier I got that the place where I belong was taken over by hostile people who thought so badly of us. I still felt that connection to the land, but I felt like people were trying to alienate me from it. And then in the end, I did leave for good. I couldn't keep advancing in my career because the settler government gutted the film industry. I couldn't get a decent job because my last name was Cree and most people knew it and threw my resume in the trash when they saw it. My mom always used to remark about seeing Indigenous people in public facing jobs because it was so rare to see a business that actually employed us. Meanwhile, racists would say we didn't want to work, while at the same time refusing to give us job interviews. Now I live on someone else's territory, and I still make films about Saskatchewan, the things that happen in Saskatchewan and being Nehia. I still try to learn my language even though I'm so far away. When I was in my 30s, my friends in Berlin tried to convince me to move there, and I did think about it because I liked that city. But there's this lonesome feeling I get when I'm not in North America where I just want to go home and I feel uncomfortable. There's this mythology about vampires where they have to bring a box of earth from their homeland wherever they go, and I think about that a lot. I wonder if a box of prairie soil would make me feel more connected to where I'm from. When the pandemic hit, I stopped traveling. I was in Saskatchewan in August of 2019 and then not again until May 2021. Usually I go twice a year, so it was really unsettling to be away from my land for that long. And when I say my land, I don't mean I own it. I mean, I feel like I belong to it. I didn't realize how much I missed it until I went back in 2021. I remembered that thin dust that covers everything, and the orange sun, and the crisp grasses, and the prairie dogs, and the deer, and the hawks. And I couldn't shake hands with people anymore, but I remembered how we all used to shake each other's hands when we met, or when there was a death in the family. I remembered watching my grandpa shaking hands with a spirit on his deathbed. Sometimes I hear settlers say bad things about Saskatchewan, and it always upsets me. Yes, Saskatchewan settlers can be some of the most racist people, but that isn't because of the land or because of the tribes who called it home before this happened. That's our own weird shit. A couple times I've been at queer events in big cities with white people who ridicule me when they find out where I'm from, and it always pissed me off. There's this kind of big city shaming of people from smaller urban or rural centers that's really unrealistic of who we are and what we believe. And in a lot of ways, it's also deeply racist, and I'm always surprised when it comes from people who think they're being open minded by ridiculing the Indigenous person from Saskatoon. I had a friend who used to talk about how she wanted to retire in either the south of France or southern Saskatchewan. I didn't really understand why she would pick Saskatchewan, but the longer I'm away and the more I understand the impact of going back to my territory, the more I get it. When I die, I want my ashes to go back to my reserve where my family is. I want to know my body will end up back home with everyone else. Throughout my life, no matter where I've gone, I felt a thread keeping me tied to my homelands. I don't understand people who can just move anywhere and don't feel that same sense of loyalty to a place on earth that they call home. I also think sometimes about people who have been forced from their lands, and I wonder what it feels like to live in a violently displaced body like that. I feel like if someone could see into my soul, it would just be a big window onto open prairie with all the wind and sun and dust and sweetgrass and small cacti. Something huge and wild that settlers only saw as farmland, but that I see as so much more.